missing child.
Breaking news, an Amber Alert now issued by the TBI for a missing 5-year-old girl.
You didn't do anything to hurt your daughter?
No, sir.
Do you know what happened to Summer?
No.
Do you know who took Summer?
No. There's nothing more to remember.
We did see some interesting body language.
But I wanted to know.
Like many others, the Summer Wells case has pulled at my heartstrings. Other cases might grab our attention for a moment, but we always come back to Summer. She's such a special girl, and the circumstances surrounding her and her brothers were just so tragic. I've spent a lot of time going back and watching some of the first interviews and reviewing everything that's happened. And I think I've finally settled on a theory. It's not a new theory. It's a theory that people have had since the beginning. But it's a theory that I always kept in the back of my mind, but was never really sure of.
Johnny, we can't do anything.
I know where she's at. She's in a fucking hotel room somewhere with some weirdo fucking motherfucker trying to sell her for some little bit of crack cocaine.
The parents, Don and Candus, say they believe someone came through a wooded trail near their house and grabbed Summer. Don says that he fears his little girl is dead. Yet Candus says that she just must remain hopeful. Take a look.
Yeah, I come into the playroom and looked. I even looked under the bunk beds and everywhere, and she wasn't here at all. When I couldn't find Summer in the basement, I come outside and I stood up here on this hill and I hollered for her and told the boys that she wasn't down there. And then I went outside and I called Donnie right away. And told the boys that she wasn't down there. And I called Donnie right away.
I think deep down, Candus knows what Dawn did. She just doesn't want to believe it. She doesn't want to accept it. During these interviews, Hunter and Allie said that when they heard of Summer's disappearance, they believed that Candus was pulling their leg. But I believe that Candus has always been fearful that something would happen to her children. Deep down, she may have had a suspicion about what her husband Don was truly capable of. And so she feared that that day would finally come and Don would do the unthinkable.
About 5:30 p.m. my wife Candus called and said she couldn't find Summer. I says, well, hang up for me and call 911. So I threw my tools in the car as fast as I could, got in there and started down the road and called 911 myself. I passed all kind of cars in double yellow and everything when I'm getting really worried. So here's my road. I pull down here, here's the creek right here. I notice my 3 boys are together and they're over here looking. And then I looked over that way and seen my neighbor coming this way towards my boys, and my heart sunk because I knew she was abducted. I knew she was gone.
I think Don Wells is so good at lying that he fooled a panel of experts.
And based on the timeline and the factors here, it's very clear to me, based on the facts, that neither one of you did anything to hurt your daughter.
No, sir. No, sir.
That's very clear to me.
Awesome.
So are you understand that I understand that?
Yes.
And you understand that initially the first thing they do is look at if it's the husband that goes missing or gets killed, they look at the spouse. If it's the wife that goes missing, they look at the husband.
Yeah.
Because statistically, oftentimes that's who it is. Again, because of access.
Right.
Opportunity, motive, means, all of that, they look at the spouse. And so when something happens to a child, parents are the ones in control of the child, so that's the first place they look.
Yes, sir.
And when I first studied this case, the first thing I looked at was, okay, what would be the opportunity for the father and the mother? And I looked at that not knowing y'all at all, just to look at it.
Don seems to have a hard time looking Dr. Phil in the eyes every time he talks about how typically it's the parents. And he explains all of the reasons that law enforcement looks at the parents. Because of opportunity. The parents have more opportunity than anyone else.
If it's the husband that goes missing or gets killed, they look at the spouse. If it's the wife that goes missing, they look at the husband.
Yeah.
Because statistically, oftentimes that's who it is. Again, because of access.
Right.
Opportunity, motive, means, all of that, they look at the spouse. And so when something happens to a child, parents are the ones in control of the child, so that's the first place they look.
Yes, sir.
And when I first studied this case, the first thing I looked at was, okay, what would be the opportunity for the father and the mother? And I looked at that not knowing y'all at all, just to look at it. And given the timeline, there's no way that either one of y'all did harm to your daughter, and I hate to even say these words, your daughter, and hid her body in the woods somewhere. I just don't believe that's even possible. So understand, I'm not sitting here wondering if you killed your daughter. I'm not sitting here wondering if you killed your daughter.
Thank you.
Don't think that for a second.
You were suspicious of him, of course.
Well, for 3 months, I spent on the phone for 3 months. I accepted every friend request there was. People want, well, I'm your friend, we can look for you. And, you know, for 3 months, I stayed on the phone day and night trying to find my baby, because I figured Facebook's the best tool possible to help find her.
What do you say to somebody who says, no, you're involved, your family's involved? How do you respond to that?
Well,
Okay, at that point you said, how do you respond to that? You meant, how do you respond to it? Like, no, I deny that.
Exactly.
But
From an
instead,
abstract.
he says, well, I used the phone, I used the keyboard. That's what you're talking about,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Did you consider this deceptive at all, or did you think he just was answering the wrong question?
Initially, we thought it was deceptive, that he was redirecting the answer to the question to somewhere else. That's what we thought.
And there are two indicators that made us think that. His blink rate goes through the roof, which means you're feeling stress, but it can also be processor speed as I am trying to think through something. And we think that's what we're seeing.
Okay. Was answering the wrong question.
Initially, we thought it was deceptive. It was deceptive. That he was redirecting the answer to the question to somewhere else. That's what we thought.
And there are two indicators that made us think that. His blink rate goes through the roof, which means you're feeling stress. His blink rate goes through the roof, which means you're feeling stress.
Well, for 3 months, I spent on the phone for 3 months. I accepted every friend request there was. People want, well, I'm your friend, we can look for you.
Okay, his blink rate here is probably 70, 80 a minute.
For sure. And that's higher by far than anyone sitting here.
You know where Summer is?
Oh, no. I wish
Do you
I
have
did.
any earthly idea what happened to her?
No, I wished I did.
Idea what happened to her?
No, I wished I did.
Do you think Candus had anything to do with it?
No,
And do you think Candus had anything to do with it?
no. She was kidnapped.
Yeah.
When he says kidnapped, I associate kidnapping, because of my background, with trading the person back for something. When he says kidnapped, I associate kidnapping with trading the person back for something. If that's the case, that has meaning.
This is the first time that in any of your interactions that he ever used this word.
She was kidnapped.
Okay, so that's the first time that he ever used that.
And he used abducted in your lead-in footage. If you
Right. Abducted.
Somebody has maybe beat out of all my children.
You just heard Don say, well, maybe she was kidnapped. Or was it leakage of something he knows that he hadn't said before? I just refused at first, but finally agreed to sit down.
Candus, I'm gonna have to ask you some hard questions. I told you this. Did you do anything to Summer?
No,
Do you know what happened to Summer?
no,
Do you know who took Summer?
no.
Anybody in your family involved with this?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Because I had nothing to do with this.
Immediately, when she said no for the third time, it was quiet. It's a whisper.
Okay, there's a distinct difference here qualitatively.
Yes.
No.
Do you know what happened to Summer?
No.
Do you know who took Summer?
Okay.
Is there any reason anyone near you would want to hurt you or your kids?
Not that I'm aware of.
What do you think should happen to somebody that did this? To the person that did this, what do you think should happen to them?
They should be put away for the rest of their lives. They should be put away for the rest of their lives. I mean, they should be tormented, I think.
My biggest fear is, her being tormented or locked in a dungeon or basement or something.
First thing she does is close her eyes.
Yes.
She's blocking.
We call that eye blocking or escaping, right?
Yes.
We're getting away.
And then there's a pause.
Yep, she's thinking.
Watch her respiration. Watch her
Yeah.
breathing. You can't miss it.
They should be put away for the rest of their lives. I mean, they should be tormented, I think.
A lot here. We see her eyebrow go up there. She's not sure what she should say. Everything she's doing says I'm unsure and shouldn't be saying this. That's what we're seeing there.
Yes, for sure. And then you'll notice if I ask you those same questions, your chin would jut. You would say that person needs to be put away for the rest of their life and tormented with no second guessing. The other thing you likely would not do is drift down into your right in an emotional state. We haven't seen a lot of emotion, but we see it here.
The guys who run organized crime around you worried about them at all?
Oh, they question him, and he has an alibi, but,
What about those fellas that live around there in the cornbread mafia?
cornbread mafia.
That's what we call them where we live. I don't know if this.
I have no idea. I've heard about some hillbilly mafia type stuff and everything, and all these different boys. We've tried to steer clear from all these.
This is words on me.
I've tried to steer clear from all these people just as much as possible. And I think they've kind of seen us as targets because they have come up and stole our stuff. They come up in my shed and stole all my mechanic tools at one time. When they knew we were gone. They knew me and her were together.
Have you
Just hang on for a
have you
minute.
guys put any kind of security or anything on your place?
No, we don't have any kind of security.
Stakes to the point that, forget about my daughter, I want out of this room.
It's all about me at that point.
I can't do this.
So
listen,
they're trying to help. They're trying to help.
Yeah, we're trying to
It's not helping me.
It's okay, Candus. Let's give you a minute.
This was a very narcissistic thing to say. But if Candus knows what happened to Summer, then she knows there's no undoing it. There's no fixing it. There's no way to bring her back. She could help in getting justice for Summer. But what does justice for Summer mean for Candus? Getting justice for Summer for Candus might mean a life without Dawn. And I think Candus is truly terrified of that.
Disappearance of Summer Wells.
What do you think happened?
I have no idea what happened.
What do her parents know?
You took your daughter in the house and you never saw her come out.
She just was gone.
If she didn't just vaporize, someone had to take her out of that house.
In her mind, she's being interrogated.
That's not interrogating you. We're trying to help you find your daughter. You want the boys back,
Yes, sir.
and you didn't want them to go to begin with. You want them back now.
Yes.
Do you think it's safe for them to come back?
It's a lot safer than it was.
Yeah.
You haven't had any acts of violence against you at the house?
No.
Okay. So there's no reason in terms of acts of violence that have been perpetrated against you that would cause them to conclude that the boys would be in harm's way?
No, we just had one issue with a woman sent to our house, and we don't know. We've heard she was sent from some YouTubers, We don't know, but we called the police right away and they took her off the property.
And based on the timeline and the factors here, it's very clear to me, based on the facts, that neither one of you did anything to hurt your daughter.
No, sir. No, sir.
That's very clear to me.
Awesome.
So are you understand that I understand that?
Yes.
And you understand that initially, the first thing they do is look at if it's the husband that goes missing or gets killed, they look at the spouse. If it's the wife that goes missing, they look at the husband. Yeah. Because statistically, oftentimes that's who it is. Again, because of access.
Right.
Opportunity, motive, means, all of that, they look at the spouse. And so when something happens to a child, parents are the ones in control of the child, so that's the first place they look.
Yes, sir.
We know that there's trafficking that goes on.
Yeah.
People take children, and I hate to even say this because it's such a horrible thing to think about, but they take children and they sell them. They sell them into all different kinds of different lives, whether it's trade, different things. That happens here in LA, it happens there. And they ask you about organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
When Scott asked you about the Cornbread Mafia, you got very upset when he asked you about that, because that's not interrogating you, it's we're trying to help you find your daughter. I started this out by saying, I don't think you hurt your daughter. I'm standing up for you. I'm saying, I don't think you hurt your daughter. But I'm gonna look under every rock. I'm gonna go down every trail. I'm gonna investigate everything. And if you want to find her, you would be right there beside me saying, right, Doc, let's turn this rock over. Let's ask this person. Let's consider this. It puzzles me that you get so upset about that. And, one theory is guilty knowledge, that you may know something you don't even know you know. You may be afraid of something that is so horrible you don't even want to think about it. And so you push it down and don't even want to think about it. But I want you to think about it. I want you to be willing to consider every possibility, because it's only when you think about the darkest possibilities that we can find answers. One of the theories is that someone abducted her in that regard. And I don't know that. I'm just saying you have to consider that. Somebody took her for some reason.
That's been one of my theories, because there's been a lot of people coming up to our house and just taking whatever at night. They come up, they knew where we were one day, and they took all the tools out of my shed.
Interviewed this family for hours. What is your theory? What's your summation about what happened?
Well, I'll start with you right up front. I don't think either one of them killed or injured Summer. We said that up front. I will say, I also don't think that Don, and I'll hand it to you in a second, I don't think Don has any guilty knowledge of anything, based on all the time I've spent with him. And Candus, if you don't have guilty knowledge, if you know anything, this is your kid. You need to push this out, whatever you know, because you show signs that you're hiding something.
Well, I'm not hiding anything, though.
Well, the reason we think you're hiding something is because each time we've talked about the Cornbread Mafia, which you don't know about, that tears you up. You emotionally fall apart. We see signs of stress.
But I don't know anything.
Everything about your body language suggests, or it indicates to us, that you know a little more than you're telling us.
Candus, there are 2 or 3 really red flag things that make us want to know more. Not saying you did X or you did Y. There are lots of ways that things leak in your body language and your behavior, and that's what we're seeing.
Do you understand that we're saying we don't suspect you of doing something wrong?
Yes, I understand that.
It's important to me that you understand that.
Yes, I understand that.
You guys passed polygraphs. I've just the logistics of this thing, it just does not point to you. And if investigators pointing it to you, they're not doing the math. It just doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is, I think you know more than you're telling, and that may be more than you're consciously acknowledging. You may know things you don't know, or maybe it's too horrible to think about, but you've got to cut through that, because you do react to certain things that suggest at some level you know something more than you're giving a voice to. And it's hard for me to say, you need to tell us what you don't know. Because
but if I knew, then I could tell
that's
you.
what I'm saying. It's like I'm telling you to say, tell me what you don't know. And you're saying, well, how can I tell you if I don't know? And I'm saying you've got to be willing to take your guards down and think through if there's anything that you're pushing out of consciousness, if there's anything that you're just not willing to acknowledge. We need your help to find your daughter. I guarantee you, when this is solved, and it's going to be solved, this isn't going to be a stranger. This is going to be somebody you know, somebody you've crossed paths with somewhere, somehow, in my opinion. It's just a matter of you're going to find it out when they're caught, or you're going to find it out because you go back through and do an inventory and figure out everything you can possibly figure out and lead us to who they are. And every day goes by, that trail gets colder and colder and colder. And if she was abducted and she's been trafficked somewhere, she can be found. I want to find that baby. I want to find that child and bring her back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.